My name is Mark Hancock. I'm the chair of the statistics department, and I've got to say, looking out at the crowd, I'm extremely happy to see all the new faces coming in who were members of the department in the past, and it just makes me happy to see you all here mixed in amongst the current faculty members, current students, and current community members. It's extremely good. So what I'd like to do first is to introduce the Dean of the Physical Sciences, Miguel Garcia Garibay, who will do an introduction on behalf of UCLA.
Thank you, Mark. So I have a very, very pleasant job to do here today. I want to welcome all of you on behalf of the Division of Physical Sciences, which is, of course, home of the Department of Statistics. We are very honored to have students, alumni, faculty, and staff here with us as we celebrate what is a really very important milestone. So for nearly 100 years, UCLA Physical Sciences faculty and students have explored the rich legacy of human curiosity that ranges from pure and applied mathematics to the knowledge that helps improve the quality of our lives and gives an edge to our economy. Now, although deeply rooted in tradition, UCLA Physical Sciences is at the cutting edge and leading the way in scientific discovery. And that is well represented by this department. In fact, we are this evening to acknowledge the accomplishments and continued success of the Department of Statistics 20th year, the youngest department in the Division of Physical Sciences. Statistics permeates every activity and every discipline and has the potential of transforming how we view the world, has the potential of transforming the world in many aspects, right? The frontiers of statistics fields like artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, and others help us address the remarkable complexity that extends from living matter to social organizations. Statistics is an exciting field. The best way to put it, in my mind, for someone who admires statistics but is not a statistician, is a data fest. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, which is one of the great contributions of this department and particularly of Mark Gold, Rob Gold. I'm mixing here. I don't know how often can you go to a place where you have 500 students ready to spend 3 days, well, almost 3 days, but 2 nights, 2 full nights, working on a problem that involves data analysis. And they're all excited, they're all intrigued, and they're doing that of their own volition. They're not going to get a grade, right? It's the satisfaction of doing something interesting, something exciting. And I think that reflects the excitement of the field. And not only that, right? But we have not only students from UCLA, but we have them working right next to students from another institution somewhere downtown. It's a good institution, USC. Riverside, I think some of the Pomona colleges, or Cal Poly Pomona, perhaps. So it's a group of students that have that in common, right? That they share the excitement that statistics has to offer. And we're here to celebrate that. I want to thank Chair Mark Hancock for the leadership of the Department of Statistics during the last 4 years. So this is important because Mark led the department through a very successful 8-year academic review that revealed how remarkable, highly effective, and collegial the department is in performing at is performing at a very high level and in every aspect of it. And it was so successful, I think, that we learned just how good and how strong the department is, but it also helping us to set up the pathway for the department moving forward, which has been, I think is very exciting. This is a young department with great faculty and students who are equally strong in research and in education. That's not that common, but having both strengths is truly remarkable. And if you add to that service to the community, which we see out of this department. That is just really hitting every aspect of what we are supposed to do and what we need to do. We really want to celebrate the success and impact of our alumni too. We know that they're doing well wherever they go, and we are very, very happy that many of you are here with us today. This is a great opportunity to celebrate, and we really want you to be part of the success of this department. So please consider yourselves part of what we are, part of what we want to accomplish, and really share with us the excitement of statistics in every aspect that it has, and the fact that so many of our new students are so interested in this field, and that the department really has not turned anyone away. So everyone who's excited about statistics is welcome, even though that represents stresses and challenges, because we might not have all the resources to do it. The department has not turned anyone away, and I think that is just amazing. So I want to end just by thanking all of you, faculty, students, alumni, and staff, and I want to for your continued support, and I hope that will really go for a long time. And I'd like to welcome back Mark Hancock to help us introduce the event. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to publicly acknowledge the support that the Dean has given to the department. It's been extraordinarily helpful to us in terms of reaching our mission. So I'd just like to take this moment to thank Dean Garibay. This event marks the 20th year which the department has been in place, and since it was formed, and it gives us a chance as a community to get together and just talk about things that have happened over the last 20 years, reminisce, and so on. So what we have now is a number of faculty who will and former students who will talk about their experiences with the department. We'd like to start, though, to hear first from Jan De Leo. So this is very good. Of course, Jan does not need any introduction to members of the community, but there might be guests here. So I'd just like to say Jan is a distinguished Professor Emeritus of Statistics and also the founding chair of the department. And he is the founding editor of the Journal of Statistical Software and the Journal of Multivariate Analysis. He started his academic career in the Department of Data Theory at Leiden University and moved to UCLA in 1987. He retired from the department in 2014. Amongst his many honours, he's an elected member of the Royal Statistical Society, the Psychometric Society, the ISI, the IMS, the ASA, and the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences. So let's welcome Jan. Page turner if you need it.
All right, I will do some prehistory. We're here to celebrate the 20 years of the department, but there's 10 years before that I was involved with setting up things, and there are some interesting tidbits in here, I think, historically, which will be probably useful to you if you ever get the idea that you also want to establish a department in a major university. So I'm not sure this button works. Yay, okay. So when I came in '87, I was basically invited by both the Division of Physical Sciences and the Division of Social Sciences. And this is what the deans of these two divisions wanted. There was a statistics group in mathematics that taught the lower division course, had a small graduate program, and basically had no room to grow because they did not get sufficient resources from the mathematics department. There was also a quantitative program in the social sciences that concentrated on graduate teaching and research and did have room to grow. So when I came here, I don't know, my thumb doesn't work. Oh, it's a side, it's a side button. All right, okay. So when I came here, I found out quickly that that's not exactly what the faculty wanted. So what the faculty wanted was a Department of Statistics with full control of lower division, upper division, and graduate statistics teaching on campus, an undergraduate minor and major, a growing faculty count, faculty always want that, of course, and a substantial and well-articulated graduate program. So those were two conflicting assignments, basically. And the reason why it took so long to have the department established is because these two different things had to be in some way or another combined to everybody's satisfaction with dialogue that Roger was talking about. So when we made the first steps of establishing a department, we emphasized a couple of things. In the first place, the department had to be interdisciplinary. And one particular sign that it really was that almost everybody who was involved did not have a statistics PhD. Because there were not that many statistics PhD persons around on campus. There were PhDs from all over the place. And also the initial hirings were not necessarily people with a statistics PhD. So the interdisciplinarity was built in from the start in that way. The second thing that we wanted to emphasize, also from the start, was that computation was important for statistics. And remember, this was 1987, which is before the World Wide Web, basically, and just after the introduction of the personal computer. So this was fairly revolutionary, and I think we used that to our advantage because we were about maybe 5 years ahead of the curve as far as that is concerned. Then the other thing which we wanted to emphasize is that teaching is important. And I guess that goes without saying, but in some university contexts it doesn't really go without saying, and you have to say it. So there was something to emphasize and to incorporate in our design of the coming department, if there ever is going to be one, from the start. And the third one was that we needed to, as well as we could, connect to the community, which was both the on-campus and the off-campus community. Ah! All right. There we go. So the answer to our initial plans was what it says on the transparency there, never. It was made clear to us on many occasions that this would never happen. The other departments, both mathematics and the social sciences, would not be willing to share their piece of the pie. And it was unrealistic to expect that a small number of faculty could force the university to create a new department, because departments are not created routinely, one a year or something like that. No, it's a big step. And there were not that many of us, so we had to make a lot of noise in order to be heard. So what did we do? The first thing was really important. We pretended that we already existed. So we did everything that a department would normally do without being a department. We started a preprint series, which eventually ran up to about 500 preprints before it died. Or maybe it's theoretically still alive, but I don't think it's actually used anymore. And a bunch of electronic journals, which also was early, because, as I said, this was in the early days of computing. We got large NSF grants to support our teaching and computing. That was critical as well. We wrote reports on how undergraduate teaching at UCLA should be organized. We were not modest. And we emancipated, well, this is a strange formulation perhaps, but we emancipated the teaching faculty, which basically means that we took them seriously. And again, this is not something which is routinely, or at that time at least, was routinely done in departments. So that was as a consequence of the emphasis on teaching, obviously. What else? We started computerizing statistics instruction. We adopted and became distribution centers for XLISP and later R. We agitated with within the academic senate and the administration. I personally sort of did the graduate council, I did the undergraduate council, I did various other councils to see what was going on in this administrative center of the university. We started a consulting center and we pretended to be much bigger than we were. And this of course should not be ignored, we very much had the wind in our sails. And what I mean by that is there was a wave of retirements, which doesn't really sound like having the wind in your sails, but practically the whole statistics department in mathematics, this group in mathematics, took early retirement in the early 90s, which means that nobody was left to teach the large undergraduate courses, which means that the division had to do something. And we were ready to suggest what they had to do. The second sense in which we had the wind in our sails is statistics as a discipline computerized. Many statistics departments realized, somewhat later than we did, but still the trend was clear, that computation is a very important part of statistics, or data analysis if you want to. So the computer revolution happened. That's one other way of formulating it. Also, the data revolution started to happen. Took off somewhat later, but still it was clear that something was going on in that respect as well. And we were well equipped to actually handle that. The enrollments in the statistics courses, partly because of all these other things, skyrocketed, and the resistance started to dwindle. That's not really an item, and we had the wind in our sails, but a consequence from the preceding things. After 11 years, because that's how long it took, we had a statistics department in the physical sciences. The service teaching in statistics was largely centralized in the department. The graduate program had a fairly simple structure. It was followed by a popular major and minor, and recently, or relatively recently, by a professional master's degree, which has the function of connecting us to the outside campus community. And every one of these things, as it says there, grew like wildfires. Maybe somewhat unfortunate image for California, but it is a saying, so I can use it. So those are the 11 years of the prehistory of the department. And I'm sure others will talk about the history after this. Okay.
All right, now I'd like to bring to the fore Rick Schoenberg, who will be the first person to speak from the existing faculty. Oops. I don't have any slides. That makes fun. Okay, great. Did you need this? No.
Why do I always have to go after Jan? That's not an easy person to go after. For those who don't know, Jan not only started our department, but he was chair for the first 14 years. From 1998 to 2012, Jan raised us children and then abandoned us and left us for Oregon, which he now describes as, quote, a nice place for Nazis. But when he left in 2000, well, when he stepped down his chair in 2012, they asked me to fill in for him. And talk about a tough act to follow. So last year, when Mark announced that we were having our 20th anniversary of the department, 1998 was a big year for our department because not only did the department started in 1998, and also, our undergraduate program major started and our graduate program started, and we admitted our first cohort of graduate students. And also, I was hired in 1998, so I'm interpreting this as 20th, celebration of me for being here for 20 years. And Jan described his, Jan had this great vision for the department. I mean, what a remarkable achievement for a person to be able to have created this department at UCLA and to have overseen its growth into what it is now, this burgeoning, exciting, and growing department. And Jan did it with great vision for the future. I mean, as he mentioned, the department always had a great emphasis on applications, on statistical computing, on what we now call machine learning, computer vision, things like that. Not every department was doing that, certainly not in the late 90s. It was a pretty radical thing to be having a statistics department emphasizing applications as much as Jan did. So, nowadays every department, I guess, has followed that lead. But it was a pretty original department at the time. Another thing that was really shows foresight. I remember when I came here, everyone had a Mac, but nobody had Mac computers anywhere else in the world. Mac in the statistical world, it was unheard of. And here it was yeah, we're going with Mac. And it turned out, kind of right. Not everything that Jan foresaw was correct. Do you remember when when I started in 98, Jan was real into XLisp stat. And I remember he wanted to be, I was a young assistant professor, and he said, can you write code? I remember spending 2 days writing code in XLisp stat to do a spectral density estimation, something like that. Anyway, that's sadly not the software of choice currently among statisticians. I do want to say one kind of somber, serious thing. Chuck Stone passed away over the weekend, and I'd like to just say a word remembering him. He was a brilliant man, a friend of mine, and a good friend to anyone who knew him. A really creative thinker, a humble, decent, and generous man who really gave a lot to me and to all of those who knew him. He taught at UCLA for several years, I'm not sure how many, before leaving for Berkeley in the early 1980s. And I just wanted to remember him on this occasion. One thing also I wanted to mention was that right before I was about to take over his chair, I remember Don Ylvisaker saying at some departmental function that there was someone, I won't mention who, there was someone notable in the math department that thought that the statistics department wouldn't survive unless we had Brad Efron as one of our faculty. It was Brad Efron or one other person, I can't remember who, John Tukey or someone like that. And of course, we didn't have Brad Efron or John Tukey, and we've survived and we've thrived despite them. But I just remember being stricken by that statement, oh my God, a department cannot survive? Is that possible? And I was about to be chair. I didn't want to oversee the total demise of our department. But it does say something to how remarkable an achievement it is what Jan has and others have created here, but particularly Jan, to have developed and grown such a strong department, and to have done so, I should say, with such, fostering a culture where everyone gets along. Jan always led and nurtured the department so that it was always very congenial. Everybody was always respectful to each other, and no one was more respectful than Jan, totally giving all the faculty and staff and students the utmost respect and really, evaluating the faculty. We were always evaluated fairly. It was never an environment where we felt like we were being bossed around. We were really part of like a family. And I just want to thank Jan and just express my admiration for him for growing us in the way that he did and nurturing such a wonderful environment. And thanks to all of you for coming and participating in this event. Thanks.
Oh, I have a picture I want to show you. Uh-oh.
Show the image first.
Yeah. Sorry. Do you know where it is? Oh, there it is.
And I don't know if you can bring it up again.
Why are you guys laughing? I got a question for you. Just wait. So hi, everybody. If you don't know me, my name is Vivian, and I'm one of the lecturers. In fact, I guess they asked me to speak because I was first hired here like in the 90s, like mid-90s. There's a long story in that, and I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on that. So let me ask you something else. I'm going to give you a pop quiz right now. I am a teacher. Take a look at the picture, all right? Tell me about it. Whose office is this? And why are you laughing? Whose office is this? No. Whose office is this? Christo's. Okay, and someone with really good eyes. Can you see what time it is? 5:10. Yeah, thank you. It's 5:10, all right? And let me ask you one more thing. All right, this is for the A, y'all, okay? All right, you do it for as a whole room, so it's not hard. What special day is this? Popcorn it out. Someone said final? No. Oh, okay. They said if I'm going to move around, I should use this. Okay, popcorn it out, y'all. I heard final? No. Just a random day? Just, no. Sunday? Huh? Sunday? No. All right. You want a, no. You want a hint? It was in October. No. All right, you guys lose. Okay?
You're tough.
I know, I'm sorry. You just should read my reviews. I'm the toughest professor on the planet, right? Okay. Thank you. Guys, you should get a prize. It was Nicholas's birthday. It was Nicholas's birthday. Oh, I know. And you know what? It says something about the dedication, right? You know, it's said that a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it says something about the dedication, about working ceaselessly and endlessly. And it gives us a glimpse into the heart of what it means to teach for the Department of Statistics at UCLA. We give the best we can. And I'll just say that this culture of teaching excellence did not arise as a random process, right? It's an outcome of a design. It had purpose, right? And Jan gave you a look at it. I'll give you a look at it from the other end, at least the way I saw it. It's the summer of 1996, and I had gotten a chance to teach for the very first time in the summer program. And I was teaching Stat 50, I think we called it then. And I was given 2 weeks, a syllabus, and a textbook. I said, go for it. And it was hard. It was hard this very first time. And I was sitting, we used to have this barn of an office across from the main department. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was just this open space. And I was sort of moping, and Jan had to be there because his office was attached to it. And he wanted to know what was going on. I said, well, I just taught, and I had a bad lecture. And he says, I know how it feels. And he said, I like to teach. And I was really stunned. You might not think that was that important, that he might share his views on the teaching at the university with a first-timer. But it meant the world to me, because how marvelous were his words. And Jan had touched upon this, too, that they were awesome to someone like me, because I had just received my PhD a few months before. And Jan is a world-famous researcher. You know, he was recruited. I mean, if you could see his vita, I mean, it's like miles long, okay? And yet, people like that rarely, condescend to spend any of their precious time on students, much less undergraduates, and certainly not on faculty like me, like who are not Senate, not tenured, nothing. And yet he was giving me his time and sharing his experience with me and giving me a sense of his vision for his department, for the Department of Statistics. So, you know, he was utterly relentless in pursuing his dream back then, that there would be a department, the teaching would be excellent, that it would be strangely egalitarian, right, in a world that wasn't naturally. And he was always, always seeking more space, more funds, more resources. I mean, honestly, my first office chair I found in a hallway. It was that hard back then. And so Jan has touched upon it, but I want to also point out something else, right? Every great leader has their operator. This is that person who toils in the shadows, so I'm about to cry, to operationalize a dream. And so, for example, I'll give you a concrete, like Steve Jobs had Tim Cook. Talk about Apple and Mac and all that, but Steve Jobs had Tim Cook. So our department was not only blessed to have Jan DeLeo as its head, but we also had Rob Gould, okay? Rob was at his side, and Rob was someone who worked endlessly to operationalize things. Rob's gonna say he didn't do a thing, because that's Rob. But I know, I mean, Rob was always there, and he was there for us. If we had a problem, I could go to Rob and could ask him for help. Rob worked tirelessly to develop the curriculum, to make it a credible teaching environment, the whole thing. It was so important to have these two men there. I mean, Rob covered all the minutia that's necessary for a department to become a department, I'll say it that way. Jan had the vision, he had the energy, he was also cunning and daring. But Rob was the guy who toiled away in the back, you know, making sure it actually happened. I know there are many other people who were involved, but these two stand out in my mind, being a teacher in the department. I guess I stand before you today. In fact, many of you are here today because of what they did so many years ago. And I'm going to close with a movie misquote, but I need this. Sorry, Mark's going to help me here. I'm going to close with a movie misquote. I mean, this is Los Angeles and Hollywood and La La Land. Do we have it? I don't know where. I'll give you the quote as soon as I know it's going to queue up. I also have my computer here with that help. Oh, here we go. Uh-oh, no, you know what? It's just a file. You know, it's on your desktop. That's it. Can we just play it? I think. Here we go. Play it. The quote is, and it's a misquote, "Build it and they will come." And I'll now share with you those who came.
quite a contrast to. Oops. Sorry. Turn it on. Which way is on? The one on the left. The one on the left. It's on now, right? No. Sorry. On now? No. Is it on now? Yes. So that stands in stark contrast to one of my early memories was coming out of a midterm exam in Tom Ferguson's class, where a colleague of mine looked at me and said, "I just wanted to scream and leave." That was from my first quarter there. So I should say that UCLA has been part of my life for all my life. My dad got his PhD in 1966 from the business school, where he specialized in statistics and branded himself as a statistician with a guy named Raymond Jessen, who Jim McQueen, who may be known to some of you, actually introduced me to at a time after I had graduated. We had lunch at the Faculty Center. So these are some of my thoughts. I am currently at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I was one of the early students at UCLA, and I arrived in 1990. 20 years later, I don't know whether to call myself the or a principal statistician. Both of them are true. And I have the world's greatest job. So I got to JPL by being a really bad graduate student. I arrived in 1990 with my bachelor's degree in economics, the non-mathematical version, after having worked for 8.5 years in litigation support consulting, which is something I enjoyed, but decided finally it was time to go back. So I knew I didn't want to leave LA, so I looked at the various options. I looked at that other place across town, and I said, well, I'm definitely going to UCLA. That's where I'm going to go. So I went over, and I talked with the biostat folks, who were very nice, but seemed to actually have some stiff requirements. And then I went to talk to Don Ilvasacker. And I told him that I was not a math major, and there would be no way I could come to this department if you were going to make me take the advanced mathematics test, GRE test, or you were going to hold me to the idea of getting a master's degree in 2 years, which seemed to be what was written in the requirements. And he just said, okay, fine, come on over. Okay, it's hard to believe. And I said, oh, and I'll need some support. He said, okay, you're going to get a letter that says you are not getting support and you will never get support, but we have to send that out. Otherwise, we get a lot of people showing up on the doorstep who are expecting support, and we don't have it for them. And I never lacked for support until 7 years later, when I ran afoul of the regulations that said you could not be employed in an academic apprenticeship position for more than 7 years, or it becomes slavery. Now, so fortunately, a few, like 6 months earlier, some people from JPL had come over to say, what are we going to do with all the data that we're going to get from our first Earth Observing System satellite? And I got to go to this meeting, and I sat in the background, and Don told me not to say anything, so I didn't. But afterwards, I got up and I went and I talked to the fellow who came over, and I said, I'm really interested in this. I'm supposed to be doing a PhD in massive data set analysis. I think your problem sounds like a good application of my technique. And they said, sure, come on over, give us a talk, tell us what you're doing. And I did. And one thing led to another, and I won't bore you with the details, but it was excruciating. And eventually it led to a postdoc and then to a job. So you never know where things are going to lead. The best thing I experienced in my career at UCLA was the humanity and kindness shown to me by the people who were on the faculty at that time. That was Jan, of course, Don Ilvasacker, Tom Ferguson, Bob Jenrick, Kerchow Lee, and Dick Burke, who was there at the time. And I was in Don's office every day for 5 years, for the first 5 years, from 1990 to 1995, asking him if that was the day they were going to kick me out. Because I had run afoul, I had not passed, I didn't have well, I did get a master's after 2 years somehow. But I just, I was not advancing at the rate. I was having a terrible time in the classes. I could not deal with real analysis. Oh my God, I only got out at all in that interim period where they dispatched with that requirement after the department was formed. That's how I got out. It's true. What? I figured. I figured they could see I was not going to leave on my own, and they were stuck with me, and I was going to stick to it. So for young people in the audience, I want to tell you that if anybody who's a student who might not be doing well in a class, forget about it. Doesn't matter. Not important. It does not mean you can't be a good or a great applied statistician, and you can't achieve a really satisfying career where you go off to do great things. Being able to take a test in an hour is not the measure of a great statistician. Oops, got to come back from that. What I learned from that experience was the ability, because it was shown to me by those people, particularly Jan and Don, the ability to look at what people's strengths are and help them develop those strengths and help them make the most of it. And that is something I carried into my career at JPL, and I was telling Jan earlier, I'm on my 4th postdoc now, 2 of which came from the UCLA Stat Department, by the way, Hein Nguyen and Yulia Marchetti. And it didn't really strike me how I came to that attitude, that sort of relentlessly positive and help people make the best out of what they can do, until I started looking at some of the material that was going around and starting participating in some discussions around this event. But that was critical to me. It made me who I am as a professional, and I have no way to say thank you enough to those people for having the faith in me to let me continue when it looked like I would never finish or never be a success. And that humanity is part of what makes UCLA, UCLA, as far as I'm concerned. And I also want to say a special thank you to Rob and Vivian, who were there with me for a good part of that. Rob as a junior faculty member and Vivian as well as a teaching faculty. They were my friends and my support structure when I really needed it the most. And so I want to say thanks to them for that. So what are the most important technical things I learned? I remember Don saying these things to me. If you can master expectation, you can be a good statistician. If you can master conditional expectation, you can be a great statistician, and that's true. I can tell you that. The law of iterated conditional expectation and the conditional variance formula, I use that every day. And no one around me at JPL, they all look at me and they say, wow, we never thought of that. Go figure. These are people that can put robots on other planets, but they never thought of that. Figure. The other thing that Don taught me was when you're confronting complex problems, and this is why I was there for 9 years, was you should start simple and work towards complex. And I insisted for 8 years on doing the opposite. I wanted to understand the whole thing at one time and then work to the specific. And it was only after I developed the sense that I understood things well enough that I was willing to do that. I felt like I didn't have the right to have an opinion until I understood them well enough, and it was only after I took that advice that I felt like I had developed that skill. So that's important, and that concludes my remarks on the department. Now, I get another 5 minutes. Because Don Ylvisaker, who couldn't be here today, sent a greeting that he asked me to read to all of you. Don was one of the founding members of the department. I believe he recruited Jan, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true? Yeah. One of the people that recruited Jan to start the department. And I found him really perplexing when I first got there. I mean, he's a great guy. Like, okay, you can come in. You don't have to get your master's in 2 years. You don't have to pass. You don't have to take the advanced math GRE. Come on over. We got all the smart people we need. What we need are people with some experience out in the world and who are willing to go back out in the world and take the skills that we teach out to the world. And okay, fine, great. That was wonderful. It seemed too good to be true, but it wasn't. Go figure. So Don, I believe, was the leader of the program in statistics within the math department. Is that right? Yeah. He had an enormous influence on my life and my career and on the opportunities I got for myself. And of course, I want to thank him and Jan principally for that, because they were both excessively tolerant and patient. So this is a greeting from Don on the celebration of the 20th anniversary of the statistics department. He says, "This is indeed a noteworthy year for UCLA statistics. It is 80 years since Paul Hole arrived on campus and 35 years since a push for a statistics department was first made to the dean. The formation of the department, its growth in size and quality have now established it as a first-rate institution. There are many to credit for this, everybody for that matter, but my listing of them is limited for want of time. Jan remains at the top of the leaderboard. He has the unusual ability to tell, persuade, people of what it is that they want. Here, a Department of Statistics. His understanding of what a department should be and has ably been continued by Rick and Mark. So thank you to them. The faculty in my time must take note of Tom Ferguson. I met Tom 60 years ago and have been his colleague for 50 of them. If one should ask for a better than what I've seen and had from such contact in this regard, sorry, it can't be imagined. I'd only add mention of Bob Jenrick for his steady support over the years and Kerchow Lee. He came to us in the darkest days, few students and little recognition of statistics. I believe that was the 90s that I lived through. To go further in naming faculty is hazardous, so I'll stop there. To me, students are the conduit from the past to the future. Thank goodness for the supply and quality of fine students at UCLA. Now, naming them is harder yet, but I've been particularly blessed by my PhD students and those who, in the early 90s, continued when they had few classmates. The department's evolution these 20 years has been exciting to watch. Congratulations, in all caps. With today's abundant challenges, one looks forward to what comes next. And those were Don's remarks.
We're going to step out of the shadows for a moment. Somewhere it says play. Okay, so my story begins in 1930, so just settle in. I've told some of you this before, so bear with me if you've heard this one before. But my grandfather's brother, my great uncle, graduated from the first class at UCLA that graduated from the Westwood campus. I think that was about 1930, which is when this picture was taken, so maybe he's in there, I don't know. And I say this story because many years later, in 1994, when I started here, so clearly, I mean, because of that history, UCLA was always a big part of our family lore and stories. And so when I started here in 1994, I gave my grandmother a tour of the campus, and she was 90 at the time or so, and as we're driving around, she just kept shaking her head saying, "Can't believe how much this place has changed in just 65 years. And I laughed too until, like, that's just what we've been thinking all day long. And that was what our lunchtime conversation was about, is kind of shaking our heads and saying, boy, things have changed. And I've been thinking back on what's changed and all of the software that we've gone through with teaching statistics. And they each kind of, it's like paleontology. They're each kind of a layer that have memories and things associated with them. And so I associate Frauke Kreuter with the Stata era, and I associate Rogers' brown bag lunches with the beginning of the R era. So they all have memories. But I think something that hasn't changed, and I thank Vivian for her very kind words, is our teaching quality of our faculty and the teaching program. I want to just say a little bit about the history of that. I never thought of calling it emancipation, but why not? You know, we were really fortunate. I was really great coming to a program where teaching was so respected, because that's really what I wanted to take my career out of. And this was at a time in the 90s when everything was kind of up for question, especially there was a national dialogue, at least among statisticians, about how and what to teach. And as to paraphrase what one person said about statistics education at the time was, you know, everyone dreaded taking statistics, but then they took it and they realized that actually they hated it. And so there was a lot of talk at the time about how to fix that, and there was a lot of research being done about what practices actually were effective and which weren't. And there was talk about, you know, changing the pedagogy towards more active learning, about changing the curriculum to focus on data and realistic problems, and real problems, and about the use of the computer. And you've already heard we were always ahead on the use of the computer. And it seems kind of astounding, but at the time it was somewhat controversial that the computer, you know, should be taught to introductory statistics students and could be used to help people learn. It was all kind of new. So we as a new department, we had the chance to kind of start something from scratch. It was much harder for other departments to change what they're already doing because change is hard. But we got to kind of take all these great ideas and build them into the curriculum from the very beginning. I do want to share just one story that came to mind while people were talking that I hope the undergraduate alumni will appreciate. But getting the major through the system was not an easy task. It was not as hard as the applied master's degree, but it took many years. And at the faculty executive committee meeting where we had to present the proposal, one mathematician who shall not be named, but you can probably look it up in the minutes, he said, no one will ever get a job with a bachelor's degree in statistics. So we've helped prove that wrong. So the other thing about this having, you know, such a strong emphasis, and I guess the other thing I'll say, the strong emphasis on teaching, we were really the first, maybe the only statistics department in the country, definitely the first, and for a long time the only, to have a department with that weight. And you know, 3 years later, in 2001, Bill Cleveland, is that 3 years? Yeah. Bill Cleveland published his paper naming data science, and one of the attributes of a data science department was that it had 15%, I have no idea how you measured percentages in this, but 15% of your efforts into pedagogy and teaching. And so we were there, probably we were over 15%, I don't know. But that let us hire a strong faculty. And so in the interest of activity-based teaching. These are our current teaching faculty. I'll let you kind of guess when they were hired. I'll just give you a moment or so to try and place this in chronological order. So the origin is at 1994, because I'm at the origin. It's a very narcissistic way of looking at it, but some of this has been given away already. So Vivian was the first of the current, well, the first in 1996, but she's also the only person we hired twice because she left us for another school on campus, but regretted her mistake and returned in 1998. So we had her then. Now the next one is also a little complicated. This one is not complicated. Natasha Sfandiari joined us also in 1998. The next one's slightly complicated. Wanda Sanchez, she's small there because she joined us at 50% in 1999, but she too realized the errors of her way, and in 2000 she came to join us at full time. So next, Nicholas Christou. So it's kind of next, but you know, 1999, and then there's a gap. And no, she told me 1999. She is always right. So I'll adjust the slides later. In 2010, after a gap, now this gap, there were other people in there, some of whom have come and gone, and some who are still quite close to us. Frauke Kreuter is one of these. In 2010, we added Akram Al-Mohawas. It's always a challenge to say in front of other people. Yeah. And then 2015, Miles Chen. And then we had a banner year, Maria Cha and Linda Zananchian and Michael Tsai. And I'm pleased to announce next year we'll hire Guani Wu, one of our current graduate students. So, so, so I guess to conclude on a more serious note, one of the other themes about, my grandmother's 65 years passing so quickly, for me, like the last 20 years have just kind of flown by in a heartbeat. And I don't think that would have been possible if I hated the people I was working with and I hated my job. But in fact, it's flown together because I've had just the best possible colleagues one could ever hope for. So I thank you very much for, even if you weren't here all 20 years, but thank you very much for those 20 years. And really amazing students who came in as good students and have left as great students. Who continue to give back. I mean, to come to events like these and help at Data Fest. So we're always happy, and you're always welcome, and I hope to see you at more of our events. So thank you very much.
Okay, I don't have much more to say or much more to add to that, but one thing I really want to say is I want to take a moment to thank Tom Ferguson. His name was effused through many of the comments that people made earlier, but I think it's also really important to recognise the contributions to the department before it was formed in laying the groundwork for the department and making it possible. And so Tom has done an enormous amount of work over time. In addition to being a brilliant statistician and mathematical scientist, he's also done an enormous amount of things that are contributed to the department over time. One thing I think is very important is he's the first person to fund an endowment for the department. So in addition to his academic efforts, he's continued to support the department once he is emeritus from it. So Tom, could you stand, please? Okay, we now have time for people from the audience. If people would like to just add their own reminiscence or thoughts. We have somebody, Chi, in the... No. Yeah. We have reminiscence or thoughts from folks. Does anyone like to come forward? And there's a microphone floating around if anyone would like to speak. Freuke.
I just want to second something that was said before, but from a slightly different perspective. So I came here right after my PhD. I got my PhD in Germany. Had no idea about the U.S. system, and my advisor at that time said, "Well, go to UCLA. That you can learn something there." And I didn't know how to go about this, but I emailed Jan. He said, "Sure, come on over." and it was exactly like Vivian mentioned. From day one, I was a freshly baked postdoc. I was allowed to sit in the faculty meetings, and I was allowed to, speak up my mind. There was a round robin at every faculty meeting. Everyone got to say, no, I have nothing to say, but, and it was always very brief. I'm doing that today with my faculty, but it was just so wonderful. And it was interesting to say, I had sworn I would be in the US for 6 months and then go back to Germany. Now it's about 18 years later, I'm still here, and I think it was only because this department has shown me how much more egalitarian and, friendly place a university can be compared to what I have seen before in Germany. So thank you.
That's actually a perfect lead-in for what I was going to share. I graduated in 2012 as an undergrad, and it's a huge campus, and the stats department really became a family for me, and I think for a lot of my classmates as well. So one of my favorite memories was we started taking over the graduate student lounge so often that they actually created a space for us to all meet and work on homework together, and it was really nice because some of the other majors and departments on campus, things were very cutthroat and competitive and very much like I have to get the top score, so I don't want to help my classmates. And the stats department was sort of the opposite of that, where we all could come together and work with the professors and talk with them. And now I joke that they're never going to get rid of me because I still come to get advice from my professors regularly. And they welcome me in and stay till late at night. And it's just been a really great department.
I was doing full-time consulting, and they invited me to teach one class in the stats department. And one day I will remember I was sitting at home doing work and watching the OJ trial. And then, then Jan emailed me and said that my teaching evaluations had been okay. And then I sent him an email saying, I think it would be great if you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then he told me over email, do you like to join our department? And there I was, you know, kind of wandering between my consulting and coming to the stats department to teach. And I came to the department and I literally endorsed everything everybody else said. And on top of that, I would say that Jan had this talent to kind of recognize exactly what you're good at. And he helped you grow so that, you know, I figured that in this department, I was given the opportunity to create and apply and grow and do all the things that were a dream for me. And I always say I made many mistakes in life. This was not a mistake I made. I'm very happy to be here. And thank you very much to everybody.
So we've heard from faculty and students. I'm coming from the staff side. My name is Dean. I was the first director of student services, or I'm sorry, with student services officer at the Department of Statistics. I was hired in 1999. I was empowered to actually create the student services infrastructure, which was amazing. And with Jan and Rob and everybody, the community gave me exactly what I needed to do to create it. Rob and Vivian brought up that and Jan, that we had an undergrad major. We started with just a graduate program. Rob was one who helped develop the undergrad major and the minor, and we worked on this together and we got this through. Everything I learned, I did a lot in this. There was a small staff, and I did a lot. In 2006, there was a director of student services at the School of Theater, Film, and Television, where I currently work, which is 5 levels above where I was working in statistics. I applied for it, and in the interview, they kept saying, "You did that in the department? You're just in SAO 3." So I ended up getting the job, and even when I got the position, I thought about it because I was going to leave this job that I love more than anything in the world to move 5 steps up. In fact, when I ended up getting the job, they had to get an exception with HR because the raise was over 15% and you have to get an exception with HR just to get to the minimum payment of the position I'm at right now. But the community, they all helped me out. I was started here in 1990, so in a couple of years I'm retiring, and this was the best part of my 32 years here, so.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm from the class of 2016, and everybody out here is sharing some fond memories. But one fond memory I have when I came to the statistics department, I actually came as a transfer student from a community college, and I came into UCLA. I got accepted as mathematics for teaching. I wanted to be a teacher, and I was having a little rough time here when I got here. Just the culture shock and kind of new environment for me, taking myself from a place of home to a place of growth and experience. And I remember I wanted to make a change in my major, and so I walked to my mathematics counselor, and they told me, "Oh, you should go to the stats department." And then I walked into Glenda's office, and I was like, "Hey, She did. To be honest, she did. She's like, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from the mathematics department. She's like, I don't know why they always sending all you guys up here. And it startled me, because I'm like, sorry to bother you. And I walked out, and she's like, wait, come back and talk to me. And then she started to get a little bit more about my experience and what I was trying to accomplish in life. And she kind of persuaded me, like, oh, you could do so much with stats. You could, such a versatile, major. You could work in the medical, you can go to finance, you can go into sports. And that's where my head was like, whoa, sports. and she's like, yeah, we work with the Dodgers. And I was like, oh, I'm sold. Where do I sign up? And next day, made the change. And first class she told me to take was Stats 20, Intro into Programming R. And I was like, what's R? I don't know. All right. We'll go in. And my professor at the time was Vivian Liu, and she was going through the course, and boom, she put up Lakers data. And I was just like, oh my God, whoa. And we're, dissecting the data, doing all these crazy stuff to the data, and that's where I just fell in love. I was in her office, I don't know, every week, every day, just, what else can I do with this cool tool? What else can I do? What? And I just kind of fully immersed myself into this, family, this community here, and I'm forever grateful for it, so.
So I just wanted to add a little bit of color to the comment that Jan made, that the graduate program had a simple structure. So I entered in 1999, and I don't really, there weren't like a lot of classes that I recall, at least not that they were required. And the other kind of consequence of the size of the program is that there weren't a lot of students in the classes, right? There was maybe, a few of us in each class, and I remember one of the classes that Jan taught was multivariate analysis, and there was 3 of us in the class, which was like not uncommon. And one time during the term, there was an incident that occurred on campus. It rained. And this class was taught in Bunch Hall, does it still exist? Okay, so, but it's all the way across on the other side of campus. And it was raining pretty hard. And so we thought, are we gonna make it out there? But we didn't talk to each other, so each of us independently decided, today's not the day for multivariate analysis. And I guess, but Jan did think it was the day. So I guess he showed up, and it turns out none of us were there. And we got an email saying, and this is totally Jan, which is that the email was like, I guess, I understand it was difficult, to get to class today. So, and we just moved on from there. But anyway, now I don't know, the size of the program is such that, there was always going to be someone there, but it was a little bit smaller back then, so.
Hey, I'm Ben. I graduated the class of 2017 in stats. So actually coming to college, I started out as psychobiology. I wanted to be a doctor. And I took Stats 10 winter quarter my freshman year just to fulfill the math requirement. Little did I know that I would absolutely fall in love with statistics. Decided at first, I was like, oh, maybe I'll just minor in it, and then try to do the psychobio major. I looked at my 4-year plan, I was like, oh, this is too much work. So 2 years in, I decided to switch my major altogether to stats. Never regretted looking back. Absolutely loved the department. It was such a vast difference, being in massive 200+ people in chemistry classes versus in the stats courses where the teachers actually cared about you and you can actually get to know them. And everything was just really hands-on. A lot of the projects we were able to do, it was really easy to kind of talk about that during my interviews when I was applying to internships, and being able to participate in Data Fest and all the things that the stats department had to offer. Honestly, wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for them. And it was an honor to be able to come back to Data Fest this year, to be able to help as one of the mentors, consultants, and walking around. Because I remember when I was there the first time, or the 2 times I did it, and it was such a struggle just to be able to try to calm people down and be like, hey, don't stress too much about it, kind of take small steps, and kind of work your way up to a final product. So yeah, I'm just rambling at this point, but thank you, everyone.
Okay, we have time for one more thing, and fortunately, that's a very important thing. At the end of the winter quarter, we had a staff member retire. That staff member is Glenda Jones. So I give you Glenda Jones.
So I just got off a plane. I was in Seoul, Korea. So I'm a little tired right now. But I'm grateful. I had to write down some notes because I'm a little spacey right now from lack of sleep. I've been flying all night. But I was in first class. I was in first class, folks. When I first met Jan, I used to call him Jane. There were 3 observations that I made. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read this properly. There were 3 observations that I made. He was first of all, he was a gentle giant. He was brilliant, and he looked like Einstein. I could never get over that. I'm like, every time I would see him, I'd be like, so are you related to Einstein? I would soon realize how masterfully he had organized and coordinated some of the best faculty from the science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines, creating a unique statistics program that would, over time, attract literally thousands of undergrad and grad students, thousands. Not only from the STEM, but also from disciplines like on our from disciplines all around our campus. Jan was the crystal ball you were looking at back in the 90s, so precise as to predict such a monumental and successful program. Did you realize this? Did you know all this was gonna happen? Or you were just one day just thinking and let me do this? Okay. When I started working in this department in, what was it? 12 years ago, I thought that God had played a trick on me because I had always been very poor in math, believe it or not, and I couldn't enunciate the word statistics. I was in trouble. But I soon learned how to say the word statistics. I used to call it statistics. And I would learn that your brilliance and intuitive decision to appoint the vice chairs that we have of the undergrad, Rob Gull, of our graduate program, Mark Hansen, Rick Schoenberg, and Hongchen Zhu, and with my gift of being a Pied Piper, attracting students, and carrying out our vice chair's visions as it related to student affairs, we went from when I first started in not 80s, I wasn't here in the 80s, I'm only 20. But when I first started in 2008, I started off actually as a part-time. That's another long story, but I ended up, they decided, you know what, you're gonna work out, let's do this. We had basically 50 students, maybe 50 students total, and that was undergrad, that was major, minor, master's, PhD. I was like, this is gonna be a cinch. I'm not gonna have to do hardly anything. And today we have, in less than 10 years, really, we have ballooned to servicing over 1,000 undergrads, over 600 grads. My God, come on, Jan. Did you know all this was gonna happen? You see these bags under my eyes? I don't have a thing up for the thing here. I got the bags to show, okay? I always like to pride myself as being the mom in the department. And that means that you were the dad of the department. So between mom and dad, you know, we got them in, we got them out, you know, I mean, it's been just remarkable. I've been so blessed to have come to such a wonderful, now it hasn't always been wonderful now. There were some moments, but it was just amazing time for me being here in this department. When you stepped down as chair, Jan, Rick Schoenberg, he became a bull on bringing the MAS program into view, where it was now becoming a reality. And then when Mark Hancock took the chair's position, he and Ching Joe and Chi Ru, hold on, get out of here. Chi Ru and Glenda Jones, we knocked it out of the park, bringing over 20, I think it was like 24 students the first year of that cohort to an already existing master's and PhD program. And that Jan, that I can never say your last name because I can never say it properly, but I call you Delu, was just the beginning of what you saw in that crystal ball in the 80s. Data Fest, Women in Data Science, individual articulated programs, data science with math, data science with humanities. That's why I retired, folks. It was beginning to get a lot, and thank God they finally hired Lori Layton to come in and help out, so that was a blessing. And all of this started by a gentle giant who had a brilliant idea, who looked like Einstein. So bravo to you, Jan. Congratulations to the faculty and staff of the Department of Statistics. I am a little saddened that I can't get up every morning and drive that hour and a half to 2 hours to work in the traffic. Totally frustrated by the time I get here. That's why I'm yelling at the children. I appreciate all of the students that came through my life, and I appreciate all of the staff, and I appreciate all of the faculty that, you know, not only were we colleagues, but friends. And there are very few places that you can work for, you know, 10, 12, 15 years and then leave calling people your friends. So I want to thank you, and I want to, again, congratulate you on educating, the success of educating statisticians. Oh, and yes. Woo, I needed one of these.
So, and the very last thing we like to do is we have our gifts for Glenda, of course. We knew she'd have trouble returning, so of course we got airplane luggage and extra UCLA goods. Very good. So, congratulations. Thank you. I'll just say one other thing. There's some cards floating around. If those for Glenda, if you'd like to sign them, try to catch them up. The last thing I'd like to do is thank the staff for organising this event. Janelle, is she here? Janelle's working and she's outside. She's the alumni engagement officer. So make sure you say hi to Janelle when you leave. Would also like to thank Chi Ru and the rest of the staff for organising this event. They've done a fantastic job. Janelle's in the back. See, wave Janelle. Right. Sebastian and Ellen. Yeah. And now, of course, we now have a mixer outside. There's drinks and food, and this is a great opportunity to say hello to your fellow alumni and generally enjoy. So please let us thank all of the speakers for what they've done tonight.